What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button, and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to it.
The second generation of Meriva was shown to the world in 2009, and marketable cars appeared already in 2010. In terms of design, the change of generations was a big step forward, but technically the car was quite conservative. It was based on the well-known Opel Astra and Chevrolet Cruze Delta platform with simple suspension schemes. But the wheelbase Meriva received from the larger Zafira, so the compact van was larger and more spacious than competitors like Kia Venga and Nissan Note. In Russia, commercial cars appeared in 2011, and at the same time the large unit assembly of the model on Kaliningrad Auto Tour was established. Painted bodies and power units came there from Spain. Prices for Meriva were quite humane. At the start of sales, the basic version could be bought for less than 600,000 rubles, and the top configuration was within 750,000. At the end of 2013, the compact van underwent restyling, which, however, was very modest. The interior was not touched at all, and outside the main change was a slightly refreshed optics. Prices have also increased insignificantly. The starting version cost less than 650,000. Well, the car did not manage to rise in price seriously. By 2015, when prices went up, Opel has already decided to leave Russia. Nevertheless, they managed to buy enough cars. 2.5 to 3.5 thousand units were sold per year, and only by 2014 the popularity fell by half. The secondary market for the model is formed expectedly well, although it can be seen that few restyled cars that reached Russia in 2014 were bought. At the time of writing, there were more than 180 pre-restyling and only 19 restyling cars for sale on Avito, and some of the fresh cars are grey. Let's briefly deal with the technique to understand what options are worth paying attention to when choosing. The condition of the car bodies, which have not been in serious accidents, is still quite good. There are some external defects, but they are minor: chips on the fenders in the area of the junction with the bumpers, paint swelling on the arches, chips on the hood and the front edge of the roof, as well as in the license plate recess. The sills should be inspected particularly carefully. In their lower part, in the seam area, the paint suffers from sandblasting and the seam hides corrosion. In the visible upper part, the paint in the door opening on the sills is sometimes rubbed through door seals to red spots, and in addition, rust can appear from under the door opening gasket. The doors themselves also require attention. Here rust appears in the area of the flaps in the corners and on the bottom edge. Either clogged drainage or damage is to blame. And here the mechanism of rear doors work does not cause any practical complaints, except that the driver should be attentive, letting out passengers, as for them to open the rear door and to look back is actually impossible. Body repair for Meriva turns out to be a matter quite affordable. Even some original spare parts cost moderate money, and the range of non-original helps to close difficult positions. For example, the front wing even original costs about 20,000, which is relatively inexpensive, and analogs start from about 15,000. On the hood you can save twice. Non-original parts start from 20,000 at the price of the original in 40 to 45,000. In some cars it becomes a difficult task to find an inexpensive front bumper, but Meriva has no problems here. Instead of firm for 50 to 60, it is possible to buy substitutes for 10 to 25,000. The assortment of windshields is also not bad. There are variants from different manufacturers at the price from 8 to 20,000. And the original is asked 30 to 40 depending on execution. Headlights here are halogen, and prices for them are also quite humane. Even the original one can be found from 17 to 20,000, while analogs also cost 10 to 20,000, and the variant from Hella, under 30,000. In general, restoration of Meriva after a slight accident can become not so difficult business, and if to add to assortment of new spare parts and dismantling, it becomes even easier. All this makes repair of a beaten car profitable for a reseller, so it is necessary to check the automobile at purchase carefully. The platform Delta, as we remember, Meriva has shared with Astra, so there is McPherson in front, and torsion beam at the rear, and unlike Astra, even without what mechanism. The combination of simplicity of design and high maintainability, multiplied by a wide choice of spare parts, makes the maintenance of running gear an inexpensive matter. For example, the front L-shaped lever complete with a ball bearing can be bought from 3,000 rubles at the price of the original in 15. But the ball bearing is riveted and can be replaced. This is hinted at by the presence of the original bearing in the sale. True, it costs under 7,000, but analogs are available from 500 rubles. Silent blocks are also offered in assortment, original and not. Small things like stabilizer struts are also available for any taste too, 5,000 with GM marking, 5,000 in Opel box and from 500 rubles for non-original. The front hub bearing is changed separately from the hub, and you can buy it from 1,500 rubles. Shock absorbers, both front and rear, cost about 10,000 per piece in the original version, and the non-original costs from 3 to 12,000, so that for 6 to 7 you can buy details from a well-known manufacturer. The rear hub, however, is changed already in the assembly and costs from 3 to 25,000 depending on the manufacturer. But in the maintenance of the rear suspension there is nothing else except for the beam silent blocks, for which in the box GM ask for 4,000 in the package Opel, under 10,000, and in the non-original version, from 1,000 rubles. In general, absolutely nothing complicated and expensive here. Brakes at Meriva are also not simple, but always discs all round, with single piston mechanisms with a floating bracket. On cars with initial petrol engines and 1.3-liter diesel engines, front ventilated discs have a diameter of 280 mm, and on more powerful versions, 308 mm. At the back there will always be unventilated discs for 264 mm. The braking system is also simple, although here, unlike the suspension, there is still a little catch: the electromechanical parking brake, specifically its control unit. It's located above the rear axle, and a combination of unfavorable conditions and wear and tear on internal parts leads to failures over time. On sale there are plastic gears for reassembly at appropriate prices, a few thousand for a small gear, and repair will be the preferred option. A new block will cost 50 to 80,000 rubles. Otherwise, you can not expect expensive surprises. Expendables are quite usual in price. The front brake disc can be bought from 2,000 and the rear from 1.5 at the price of the original in 10 to 12. A set of pads will cost another couple of thousand. So, if the electromechanical handbrake is good, the brake system will not require money. The steering is also not without a trick. Here the electro-hydraulic power steering is applied, and its pump, united with a tank for liquid filling, has not record resource and quite record price. If you neglect to change oil, then by 120 to 150,000 black grease is almost guaranteed to kill the pump. Thus the restored pump in an assembly costs under 150,000 rubles, and new from TRW, under 180,000, that is indecently much. Based on this, oil in the hydraulic system should be changed at least every 50 to 60,000 kilometers, and when buying to check the work of the amplifier and listen to the work of the pump for noises. Otherwise, steering control is quite usual, the resource of a rack is typical, and the restored one can be bought for 30 to 40,000 rubles instead of 100,000 for the original. The choice of gearbox here has the same unexpected trick as in Astra. The matter is that manual gearboxes cannot be called an easy option for the frugal. 5-speed units with indexes F13 and F17 can be considered as one of the most fragile at all. They do not hold loads well, and the most common problem here is the destruction of shaft bearings. When buying it is necessarily worth listening to the box on a hoist for extraneous noises, and do not forgive anything, an extra sound can cost 50 to 60,000 rubles to buy a contract MKP with an unpredictable resource. In addition, it is worth checking the work of the box on the move, assessing the work of synchronizers. On the most powerful and moment versions of Meriva it is possible to meet a 6-stage automatic transmission with index M32. It is more reliable, bearings and differential here are stronger and do not crumble in a sump by 150,000 kilometers. But it should be checked approximately the same as 5-speed variants. The alternative to manual boxes was a 6-speed automatic AF40, aka in the original ASIN TF, ADSC. And it should be said that this option is very good, especially against the background of Opel's robots Easytronic and some automatic transmissions from GM. The box, of course, is rather hot and actively using torque converter lock, polluting oil. All this means the necessity of good service. with oil replacement once in 50 to 60,000 kilometers. But in general, the automatic is quite reliable, and if not to save on service and to think about additional cooling, it is capable to pass 250,000 kilometers. Besides, motors here are not the most powerful, and the car is not the heaviest of those on which this automatic transmission was put, so the chances of good resource are high. The list of motors offered for the Meriva is not very long. All gasoline units are variations of 1.4-liter volume, atmospheric A14 XER for 100 horsepower, and also supercharged A14 NEL and A14 net for 120 to 140 forces. In fact, turbocharged motors technically do not differ much from the atmospheric ancestor. Cast iron block, chain timing and distributed injection promise a good resource. In practice, it usually turns out to be so, though it is not without nuances. The resource of timing is not a record, and already by 150,000 it is necessary to be concerned about its replacement. Phaser regulators may also require replacement at a similar mileage. It is worth to follow the cleanliness of the cooling system and tightness of the downpipe, especially in turbocharged motors, which are even less hot than the atmospheric. Well, by about 200,000 you can get ready to replace or rebuild the turbine. It is mastered in repair, so you can usually do with cartridge replacement. Diesel motors are represented by 1.3-liter units, which were not offered here, and versions of the larger 1.7-liter A17DT. They are not often found on sale. On the secondary market they are about 15%, but it does not mean that they are bad. In general, the engines are quite successful, attractive, economical and quite reliable. But now, when mileage of cars fluctuates about 200,000 kilometers, potential investments in fuel equipment and supercharging can already be solid, so when looking for a diesel version it is worth to lay down more time and money for diagnostics. From a brief analysis of the Opel Meriva technique, we can conclude that the choice here comes down not so much to the motor, as it usually does, but to the gearbox. Mechanics cannot be called an economical option because of unreliability. An automatic is good, but still will require at least regular service. In addition, some features like an electromechanical handbrake and electro-hydraulic power steering should be added to the nuances of the choice of the machine. Taking all this into account, the logical choice will be a car from the first or second owner with a mileage of up to 150,000 kilometers with automatic transmission and in a good configuration, approximately those who want to get from the motor maximum resource and minimum costs. You can pay attention to the atmospheric version. True, it is combined only with a manual gearbox and the equipment is usually close to the basic, but everything necessary in it is already there. So, well-groomed copies with honest mileage are also quite worthy of attention. The more so that the original rear doors do not depend on the equipment. In conclusion, the Opel Meriva II offers a unique blend of features, including its distinctive Rolls-Royce-like doors and reliable performance. For 700,000, it presents a compelling option for those seeking practicality and style in a compact MPV. However, potential buyers should weigh the vehicle's overall condition, maintenance history, and how it fits their specific needs. Ultimately, if you value innovative design and a comfortable ride, the Meriva II could be a worthwhile investment. Thank you for watching, and we hope this analysis helps you make an informed decision.